can see in the demonstrations in the examples, you can see that these mathematical operators are outputting the values that they are equivalent to in the Python shell. You have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, pretty basic operations. And in case you're not familiar with the mod operation, let's say you're dividing two numbers, right? 234 and 5. So it basically divides the two numbers and then outputs the remainder of that division. So in this case, as you can see in the example, 234 mod 5, it divides 234 by 5, which gives you, well, 230 is divisible by 5, which means that the remainder would be 4. And as you can see, that's what's printed in the shell. And then we have the exponentiation and the floor division operators there. And the comparison operators are different from the arithmetic because instead of outputting a number, these output a value true or false. So as you can see, we have the greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, and you can see how these operators are used in the Python code using the example on the bottom right. And in addition, you also have the equal sign, which requires two equal signs instead of just one, because the one equal sign is variable assignment, which I'll get into in the next slide.
So you guys can also just try all of these out on repl.it, and if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. And now we'll go to intro to variables.
Yeah, so variables are one of the fundamental concepts of programming, and what they do is that they save and represent a piece of data. So all variables have a name, a value, and a type. The name of the variable is what it's referred to in code. As you can see in this example, the variable is my_variable. The value of the variable is the data that the variable contains, and the type is the data type of the variable, which I'll get into in the next slide. So to declare a variable in Python, all you have to do is write the name of the variable, an equal sign, and the value that you want the variable to be. And if you put a variable without the quotes inside a print statement, like I did here, you will print the variable's value, which is 5. Now here's a quick note about naming variables. Variable names in Python can only contain letters, numbers, and the underscore. So you can't include spaces nor dashes. And the name must start with a letter or underscore. So you can't start out a variable name with a number or any special symbol like an exclamation point.
Okay.
Right, now let's get into variable data types. So here are some of the basic data types that we'll be covering in this workshop. They are strings, which are any message, usually characters, words, and sentences, surrounded by single or double quotes, such as hello world on the right. Now, quick note, you can put numbers inside of strings, but if you do put a number inside of a string, you cannot use that string as a number in a mathematical operation. You need to have the number either be an integer or a float. An integer is just a number with no decimal value, such as 84,393. And by the way, if you have a big number, like in the thousands, you cannot include the comma inside the number in order for it to be an integer, because commas have to do with lists, and that's not a data type we'll be covering in this workshop. A float, or a floating point number, is a number with a decimal value, basically, such as 5.32. And again, the no commas rule applies to that. A Boolean is a true or false value. And when you're printing a true or false value, you're not supposed to put the quotations around it, because then it would print the word true rather than the value true or false Boolean data type variable.
Yeah, quick note on that. Oh, sorry. Quick note on that. You have to capitalize the true or false, otherwise it will produce an error and it will not be recognized as a Boolean.
Yeah, you don't want to forget about that. I think I did that a few times when I was starting out with Python.
Yeah, easy mistake. Okay, next slide, I think.
So here's some more information about data types. Unlike in other programming languages, such as Java, when you're declaring a variable for the first time, you do not need to specify its type. The Python interpreters automatically assume the data types of your variables. And if you want, you could use the type function to check what type of variable is. All you would have to do is use type and then put the variable that you want checked inside of type, or the value you want checked inside of the type function. So here, as you could see, I put the type function inside of a print statement, and it prints the class string. It's really useful so that if you have a variable and it's getting lost in your code, and you want to know what type it is just to make sure that you're using the right value, you could use this type function to make sure that your code is running correctly. Right. You can change the value of a variable or reassign it in the same way that you declared it. And the new value can also have a different type, unlike in other programming languages such as Swift, where one variable type can only contain that variable type. Here in Python, as I've demonstrated here in this example, first variable is first set as an integer and then later set to a float. And you can even assign a variable to another variable. So if you assign, for example, first variable to the variable second var will get the value of first variable, as you can see here as a result of this print statement.
Okay, so now we have operations on variables, which is basically like mathematical operations except on variables. And to make it simpler and concise, we have like specific things. So you can perform operations on variables to change their values or assign them to an operated value. Here are the few mathematical operators for variables. So plus equal sign adds a value to a pre-existing variable. So as you can see in like the small code on the side, miles equals to 50. When you add miles plus equal 20, instead of printing 20 or 50, it prints out 70 because it adds the 20 value to 50. Subtraction, you can apply the same method, and you can use that for division and multiplication. You just have to put an equal sign at the end. And that can work for like other operators as well, such as mod, all right? You just need to put the equal sign. So for example, here we have miles times equals to 3, and when you print miles, you get 338.1. Yeah, I think, yeah. Oh, sorry, 210, sorry about that. And when you do kilometers, miles times 1.61, you get 338.1. Now, there's also another like function thing we can use, which is round, which you have the parameters of number and digits, and it returns a number rounded to the nearest decimal place, which is digits. So if you do round kilometer, as you can see on the side, and when you print kilometer, it becomes 338 instead of 338.1. It takes out the 0.1. Now, digits, that parameter you don't really need right now, unless you have multiple decimal places, like 338.1234, and you want to round it to the nearest hundredth place, like 338.12. So round is like a really useful thing you can use. Right, now we have concatenating types. String concatenation is the operation of joining character strings end to end. So it's basically like adding two parts of a word phrase together. You just need to add both strings using the plus sign. So for example, we have here print base with parentheses and with quotes and parentheses plus quotes again ball. And that prints baseball all as one word. That is string concatenation. You can also do the same thing except using a comma. And when you use the comma, it automatically puts a space between it. So if you don't want the space, just use the plus sign. But if you want the space automatically, use the comma. When you're concatenating two different types, however, you need to use the comma or change the type of one of the values. Like for example, see in the slide below, example below, you print grade and the integer 9, but you cannot print 9 like that, otherwise it will become an error. You have to make 9 a string. Or you can just use a comma and it will work as a string and an integer. This can be really helpful in the end, and you can change the values type by putting type and value in parentheses. This can be really helpful. All right, now we have intro to if statements. An if statement is a decision-making function that executes a conditional based on a certain value. You will find if statements in like many programming languages, so this will be very helpful. For example, in a real-life scenario is, if I finish my homework, then I will go outside and play. This if statement, if you want to use the if statement in Python, you have to start with the key function if, parentheses, and then colon, and then state the conditional. If the value is true, the conditional will be executed. If it's false, nothing will happen. So as you can see, in the very first one, it executes everything in the indented block because it's true. But the second one, it doesn't execute the conditional because it's false. It prints out conditionals because everything outside of the conditional is printed. So it will basically just skip a conditional. And one thing you really need to know that if Python will catch and make an error is that when you're using if statements, you have to have an indented block. Like if, and then the code inside the if statement, it is indented. If it's not indented, there will be an error. You can also use this as booleans as values, and you write everything you want, like the comparison operators, whatever the values in the parentheses, and then colon, and you print it out. You can try this on REPL it and see what happens. And nested if statements are basically if statements that are within another if statement. So you don't have to have just one if statement if you want. You can also have like multiple at the same time inside each other. So in the very first one, the user's age is tracked by using variables in if statements. If the age is younger than the max age, then you will get the options of the two conditionals. If the age is old enough or young enough. If the age is too old, then it will skip all three of the if conditionals and will execute only the last one. Oh, sorry about that. See here, age equals to 10. If age 10 is less than max age, which is 12, then it will run and try these if statements. So since 10 is less than 12, it will go to this conditional. If age is greater than min age, and is age greater than min age? Yes, 10 is greater than 6. So it will print you are old enough to ride. And age is not less than min age, so it will skip that, and it will go to the next part if age is greater than max age. But it's not greater than max age, so it will not print you're too old enough to ride. Okay, oops. Else statements. An else statement is an alternative statement that is executed if the previous conditional is false. For example, if I'm feeling fine, I will go to school. Else, if I'm not feeling fine, then I will stay at home. Else statement consists of the word else followed by a colon and the output slash what you want to be executed. So like it says, oops, sorry about that. If it says here, if 5 is greater than 20, it'll print greater than, else print it's less than. Because the if conditional is false, the else statement is executed. Because 5 is not greater than 20, it will go to else. In the second one, if 5 is less than 20, it will print it's greater, else it prints it's less than. 5 is less than 20, so it will go to it's greater and print that out. But it will not need to run the else statement because it's not less than 20. It's not greater than 5. Right. Time for a Kahoot.